Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Breaking Barriers webinar from the PGMOL. Throughout 2021, the PGMOL has been providing online webinars with key figures from the refereeing community on a wide range of subjects as part of the organisation's commitment to diversity and inclusion. We've had sessions highlighting women who've reached the top of the profession. We've explored disability in refereeing and heard from some of the people taking up the whistle from underrepresented groups, all of whom are making a difference within the beautiful game. Today, our show has an international feel. We bring together elite level officials who've worked all over the globe to talk about some of the similarities and the differences in their experiences as elite referees. I'm your host, Kate Mason, and in some ways, perhaps not unlike our brilliant guest today, I decided that I needed to make my career in football at a very young age. And I've done that in broadcasting, working for Sky, beIN Sports and the BBC, and hosting the Football Ramble, the world's biggest independent football podcast. It's my pleasure to host this session today. Now, before we get going and hear from our panel, here's Mike Riley. He's the MD of the PGMOL, and he has a few words to welcome you all.
Thanks, Kate. And it's a pleasure to have you hosting again on Breaking Barriers. And a huge welcome to everyone joining us online for this special international event. We're truly excited about today's programme, where we'll get to share some fascinating stories and lived experiences from a very distinguished panel, inspiring a wave of referees to follow in their footsteps in years to come. Greater diversity in refereeing benefits football massively. So it's a very warm welcome to Beath in Australia, Chénard based in Canada, and joining from slightly closer to home, Stuart Attwell, who is proudly representing all of us in the UK. Our panel are not only role models leading the way, but have all made historic steps within their respective careers. And I know that today's webinar will be top class. With today's programme, Breaking Barriers is going truly global, giving us all the opportunity to share knowledge and wisdom with talented referees and match officials, regardless of their background and location. So it's back to Kate to bring the very best out of our excellent panel.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, Mike. Yes, I'll be hoping to do that today. Let's get to our special guest then, shall we? Joining us from Brisbane, Australia, A-League referee Chris Beath, a hugely experienced ref. Chris was one of the inaugural VARs in the A-League, the first competition in the world, famously, to implement VAR. He was selected for the 2019 Asian Cup and this year was appointed to the delayed 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. He officiated the men's gold medal match between Brazil and Spain. Chris, lovely to see you today, or this morning, I should say, probably for you.
Yes, it is an early morning. Great to be here, Kate. Thanks for having me.
How early are we talking? Is the sun come up yet?
It's just come up. Yep, just gone 6 a.m. here.
Nicely done. Thank you so much for doing that. I guess this is some of the pitfalls if you're going to have a truly international webinar as we are today. We've also got former international referee Chénard. Carol-Anne had a highly distinguished career spanning over 15 years on the Canadian Soccer National List and the FIFA International List of Referees. Following her first professional appointment in 2005, she was one of an elite class of international referees in the women's game, earning appointments to all major international competitions. She retired after being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019. But she's looking very well today, Carol-Anne. Great to have you with us.
It's a real pleasure.
And I must compliment your wall before we go any further. Are these all spoils from your career?
They are. It's a little bit of an ode to my career and some of the game balls from some of my biggest matches and some awards and things that are important to me.
Awesome. Lovely. Thanks for sharing them with us. Last but not least, our third panelist, a face familiar to Premier League audiences, Stuart Attwell joins us. He made history back in 2008 when he became the Premier League's youngest ever referee, aged 25. He's worked in the J-League in Japan too and sits on the FIFA list of referees. Stuart, good to see you.
Okay, good to see you.
It's a bit later for us, isn't it? So we're trying to keep the energy high, but we're ready for our evening cocoa. I feel like, Stuart.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, certainly. All right, well, let's crack on then. Now we've got all of our illustrious panel lines up. I think the first thing that's really helpful to talk about in all of these sessions is how you guys made the first few steps into the refereeing profession. So I don't know if we could start with Stuart. Stuart, what was your earliest stages of realizing, okay, I think I could do this as a career?
To be honest, I followed probably quite a traditional path in so much I moved through amateur football, through Sunday morning football, and progressed into the semi-professional game. And it was only really the realization that I could make it as a profession when I was actually working at kind of EFL level. Throughout the progression through the various levels, it was just a case of really enjoying myself and just thinking that I wanted to do it one level higher. I didn't set out with any real aspirations of having it as a career. I think I was probably realistic about the numbers of people that referee in England, and the number of people that are fortunate enough to be employed within elite refereeing. So it was only when I started refereeing League One, League Two, the Championship, that it probably became more of a realistic prospect. But that's not to say that, you know, the drivers of being ambitious and wanting to succeed and officiate at a better standard of football and a better level weren't still there all the way through as I was moving through the pyramid.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so what you're talking about is a kind of conventional route into refereeing. How is it for you, Carol Ann? Does that reflect the sort of process that you took in your career?
Maybe I had a little bit of a different career because I was an athlete in my young life. I did play soccer, but I also was an international short track speed skater. And in the summers, I played soccer, and it was actually one of my coaches who made our entire soccer team take a refereeing course so that we better understood the laws and maybe respected referees more. He then offered us the opportunity to referee some, house league soccer here. And that's what I started doing to make a little bit of money for university. But I continued to compete at the international level in speed skating. And so when my career in speed skating ended, refereeing provided me a great opportunity to continue to be involved at sport at the highest level, to continue to travel, to keep training and keep in shape. When I was younger, I never thought I would go to the Olympics as a referee. I always believed I would make it there as an athlete, which didn't happen. But things change and goals change. And I think that's really important that, early in my life, if you would ask me, would I ever be a FIFA referee? I probably would have nodded yes. But in my head, I was thinking, who wants to be a referee? But eventually, with the opportunities that were presented to me and my performances, I was able to progress through the Canadian system and eventually get my international badge.
Wow, okay. And Chris, listening, are you thinking everyone should be doing these refereeing courses when they're playing in the sport so that they understand what on earth is going on most of the time?
I was actually thinking, gee, I missed my calling as a speed skater, so I don't have that on my resume. But you're right. I think it is a good point to have a bit of a background with the laws of the game as a player. So I certainly played for a decade and started refereeing late in my playing career, and have thoroughly enjoyed every second since. It didn't take me long to realise that I had more potential with the whistle in my hand, and stopped playing a couple of years after refereeing. And then, similar to Stuart, kind of a product of the system. So I got a taste of refereeing at different stages and wanted to continue to push myself further and further. And as I'm sure Carol Ann and Stuart know well, once you get a taste for the next level, it doesn't take much to want to get a taste for the next level and then the next level. So it's a great aspect of football to be able to push yourself continuously throughout your career.
Was there any point at which, Chris, you felt as though you'd kind of reached your level and perhaps it would be a huge struggle to get to the next stage?
I don't think I'd ever had the feeling of I've reached my level, like this is my comfort zone. I've always wanted to push myself further and further, but it's certainly daunting at each level. There's a step up in terms of the physical, technical, tactical abilities, and that happens at every level, from youth league to senior football, from senior football to national to international, and then the different stages on the international scene. So yeah, didn't feel like I'd reached my zone, and hopefully I still haven't, and hopefully there's still some improvement to come.
Quite right. I imagine, I expect one of the things you guys get asked about the most, or probably challenged about the most, is VAR in recent weeks and months and years. Of course, Australia was where it first kicked off, and I remember seeing video clips of it being used in this absolutely incredible way, where you could hear the referees and people were like, why can't we have this here? And then now, of course, in the Premier League, it runs into in all games, it runs into questions and criticisms and all that sort of thing, as all refereeing does. What did you first make of it, Chris?
Honestly, I was a little bit unsure about it to begin with, and being a bit of a football purist, I wasn't sure how that would impact the game and the flow of the game. But as with any new technology, the more we use it and the more we get used to it, the more benefits we can see with it. So I think that it certainly makes football cleaner and fairer, hopefully, in that we're getting the right outcomes on the pitch. But the one wonderful thing about our game is that it is full of opinions, and just because we've got another tool with VAR doesn't mean that it'll stop all the discussions around interesting clips and controversial discussions or incidents in games. So I think that will continue, but hopefully we're seeing some of the benefits now that the world is getting used to VAR in football.
Yeah, it's having to, certainly. Stuart, do you feel like in the UK VAR is still kind of in its infancy?
I think in fairness, it's in its infancy across the globe. I think what everybody's trying to really work towards in a very accelerated fashion is trying to put the whole VAR project into a place where it's fully integrated into the game, and it's really working as effectively as possible to, as Chris says, ensure that more accurate decisions are being made, more fair decisions are being made, and you know that really the thing that is front and center for anyone going to watch a game or taking part in a game is the skill and the ability of the players. So I think, you know, the kind of much articulated vision for minimum interference and maximum benefit is something that everybody's trying to pursue. And I think, you know, it's still a very young project, you know, in terms of maybe 4 or 5 years since it's really started being rolled out. But I think we're now dealing with far more nuanced discussions about it. You know, we've moved on from the real basic tenets that were discussed in the past, and I think because of that, we're in a good place to actually move it forward and really extract as much benefit from it as possible.
Nuance is what we're all looking for in football, though sometimes I'm sure you'll recognise that that's not exactly what everyone is dealing with. Caroline, what do you think about about VAR at this point in time?
Well, I think, I echo what the other said. It's really about supporting the referees, giving them an extra tool on the field. It doesn't change what the referee in the middle of the pitch is doing. They're making their decisions. They're using all of their expertise to try and make the correct decision on the field. And then VAR is that extra tool to make sure that the referee doesn't make a game-changing mistake. No referee goes on the field looking to make a mistake, and we don't want to influence the game if we have made a major error. So for me, it's really just a support for the referee. It's developing. There are changes happening every year, and Chris has been involved since its infancy, but it's being improved, and it's integrating in better into the game, and fans and spectators and players are learning as well about how it's applied and in the situations that it's applied. So again, it's just another tool, and I think all referees want to get the right decision on the field, and VAR is just a tool to help them do that.
And it sounds like you think education of fans getting used to it as well as referees is kind of key to its acceptance.
Absolutely. I think you saw when it was first introduced at the Men's World Cup, and then there were some law changes, and it was used again at the Women's World Cup, and there was a lot of confusion around some of those changes, and it wasn't a change in the VAR approach, but just a change in the law. So I think part of it is about educating fans and spectators and coaches and players, just like we have to learn how to apply it on the field. I think the more we can be transparent in some of the ways that it's applied, we'll find that fans will maybe come to like it in some cases, and will understand it better and maybe reduce some of the confusion that occurs in some of the decisions.
I remember in the early stages of, being at a game and VAR running, and just the feeling that nobody knew, I'm talking about in the Premier League here, nobody knew, Stuart, why necessarily this was happening, or even what was being checked. And there was a sense of kind of unrest and uncertainty. And it feels, and I don't know if you agree, Stuart, it feels as though that has developed in the last few years, or in the last few seasons.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of where feedback from supporters in particular has been listened to, and changes have been made to try and make that in-stadium experience a lot clearer and a lot better. And I think the positive changes around messaging on the big screen and showing incidents that have been changed after they've been changed has really helped. And I think moving forward, there's going to be some, hopefully, some more positive changes that are coming along in terms of better use of social media and that sort of thing to really make that communication about VAR incidents and VAR decisions more instantaneous, so that people who are sat in the stadium really continue to enjoy the game as they will have done in the past, and get absolute true enjoyment from the live spectator experience.
Certainly. Something you guys all share is that you've refereed at big tournaments, as well as, of course, in your national leagues. Chris, what would you say is different about the experience of refereeing in a league as opposed to a big event?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Certainly with a league, we've got the good fortune of having quite a long period of time. So we've got the ability to work with stakeholders, players, coaches, as Stuart mentioned, supporter groups, broadcast partners, and so on over the course of many, many months. Whereas in a tournament, it's short, sharp. It's often just a couple of weeks or maybe a month, and it's full on. It's go, 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 go. It's games every couple of days, if not every day. And certainly at international level as well, you've got the added complexities of having a diverse mix of players from all over the world. So it's managing players that have different backgrounds, different languages, different concepts of football understanding, and making sure that we adapt and give them a consistent approach throughout what is quite a short, sharp experience. Obviously, the level of football can be quite different as well in terms of between national and international, because we're getting the best of the best. And that's, of course, exciting from our perspective as well, because we want to be involved with the best football and the best players, and see the best action that we can as well. We've also got, with international football, the benefits of working with other referees from all over the planet. So we're fortunate to referee with colleagues from different confederations, and one of the opportunities and challenges is making sure that we're all on the same page in terms of our football understanding, and ensuring we're delivering a consistent performance across all the games throughout that experience.
Does this echo what you've seen as well, Caroline? And I suppose another thing I'd say is, a difference that you see from the outside is, of course, the impact of a mistake or something not going right is just so huge in a knockout setting.
Absolutely. So I agree with everything Chris said. I think the other thing that maybe for me jumped out when I went to my first international competition is just all of the extra things that are outside of a big event like a World Cup or a big international event. There's fans, there's fan zones, there's, your picture up on the big screen, you're doing all of this media before. As you said, the attention on the games and on your decisions is that much higher. So for me, that was the biggest difference, coming from like a league that you're refereeing in and week out, where the players know you and they know a little bit of what to expect, and then having to go into a tournament and really having just one opportunity to demonstrate your ability. And hopefully, you perform well in that game and you have another opportunity in the tournament. And so I've always approached kind of every game and every tournament the same way, which is go out and be the best referee I can be in that game, and hopefully not give them a reason to not give me another one. And I think that served me very well over the 15 years. And that's just how we have to approach every game, because the next game isn't a given.
That sounds unbelievably stressful, as it always does when I'm talking to any referees. Oh my goodness me. I connected, but not the same question for you, Stuart. So you chose to go and referee in Japan for a period of time. That was presumably like a development process for you. How did you find that?
It was really rewarding, actually. It was part of a partnership between PGMOL and the Japanese Football Association. So it involved myself and Anthony Taylor in the first instance, going out for 3 weeks, refereeing in the J League. And I think what it really served to illustrate for us was exactly what the guys are saying there about tournament football, in terms of having to adjust to the different cultural demands of football in a different country, in terms of understanding the expectation and behaviour of players, and really just trying to make sure that you could adjust and adapt to fit in and provide kind of a refereeing service, if you like, that was in line with everything else that was being undertaken by the other referees in the J League. So it was very rewarding, very challenging, but very enjoyable as well.
Is it something, Chris, I know you've refereed into places too, including Japan. Yeah. Is this something you would like to see a lot of, if it's possible for referees?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, right, similar to Stuart, I had the good fortune of refereeing in as well, and it's one of the countries that I've traveled to many times, and I think any of the exchanges, regardless of where they are extremely valuable. And as Stuart mentioned, it gives you exposure to a different footballing culture and different expectations, different players, different tactics, the way teams approach the game, and the scrutiny that follows as well. And we can get that from all different parts of the world. So I think the exchange programs have a huge place in the development of referees across any confederation.
And how different is the experience when, I mean, apart from you don't know people so well, but is it culturally very different, or did you feel like there were more similarities than you'd expected in the general work experience?
Yeah, it's ref cult seems to be very similar all around the world, that we're all silly enough to be involved in this aspect of football. And I say that tongue in cheek, of course, but the culture that exists around refereeing is so similar around the world. So we're really fortunate that we're like-minded people working together. But in terms of the cultural differences, they can be massive in terms of even the little things, in terms of nutrition before a game. That can be a bit of a wake up to make sure that you're aware and familiar with what you're going to eat before a game. And then you've got the demands of different languages, different backgrounds, having to communicate a lot more through body language and other smaller aspects that come with an exchange in a different part of the world.
Oh, it does sound interesting. Caroline, as well, we're talking, of course, about working in different parts of the world, but we're also talking about this sense of a refereeing community. And I wondered, did you have a mentor? What was your support network like when you were working as a referee?
Sure. Well, when I first started, I was one of the first females referees in my area. So I was really well supported by the referee community here. I think, internationally, the referee community is very strong, as Chris and Stuart both said. We support each other. No one understands what it feels to stand on a soccer field and either make a mistake or make a really great call than other referees. I think they really support each other through tournaments. We really are the extra team that's there. We train together, we eat together, we analyze games and videos together, and we really are there to support one another. I've always known the referee community was strong, but when I was diagnosed with cancer right before the Women's World Cup in 2019, the whole community that was there, the referees, some of them who were at their very first World Cup, were sending me messages on game day, and on my first chemotherapy session, were sending me videos. They really took the time. I really felt like I was part of the team, and they continued to support me today. So I know that anywhere I go in the world, that there's a referee that I can visit and a house that I can stay in. And I think that most international referees would feel that, not everyone wants to be a referee. And so the referee community becomes really, really strong. And having mentors is really important because it's so difficult to be a referee. And I think particularly when we're young and coming through the system, having somebody who understands the difficulties that we sometimes face when we're young referees dealing with adult coaches or adult players, that can be really difficult. And so having a really good mentor system in place, maybe, will help retain referees, will help support them during the difficult times so that we can start retaining referees and making sure we have enough to keep these leagues going.
That's a great point. On that, if I could ask you another question about your retirements, because some referees, of course, work to great ages. I won't specify, but clearly it is a physically taxing job, and much like footballers, you can't carry on beyond a certain point. You've got to pass your fitness test. How did you find that process of making the decision to retire, or did you feel like there wasn't really a question about it?
So I think, because, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer, 2 days before leaving for the World Cup, or before I was supposed to leave for the World Cup. And at that time, I really didn't know, what my treatment would entail and what the recovery would look like. And so I immediately set a goal of hoping to be able to get healthy again and be able to participate or qualify or at least make myself eligible for the Olympics in 2020. I went through all of the treatment with COVID and the Olympics being delayed. It just made the most sense for me to retire. It was pretty tough on my body. And, I think it was harder than I thought it was going to be. And partially, I think it was because it was a little bit not of the timing wasn't exactly what I had envisioned. And that happens to everybody, whether it's referees or players. Sometimes injuries or illness, steps in. So I did find it a little bit more difficult than I thought I would. And I think until I kind of landed on what I was going to do next and kind of the next steps, I found it really difficult to talk about. People would ask me and I would break down crying and I didn't know why. But I'm really happy. I was really well supported by FIFA, by CONCACAF and the Canadian Soccer Association that kept me involved. I was taking assessor courses and instructor courses, and I still felt really close to the game. And so when I eventually made the decision to retire, I really felt like I had my next steps in place. So that made it a lot easier for me.
That's really great to hear, although it does sound like it was a really difficult time. And I'm glad you're just healthy, that's the main thing.
Stuart, that's what's the most important, right? So
exactly, yeah.
It is a game. We love it and we give our heart and our soul to it, but ultimately, we have to be able to move on as well. So,
and to listen to what your body's telling you, I guess, which is something we hear all the time when we're talking about football and footballers generally. Stuart, is this something you've ever given any thought to? The retirement process?
In terms of retirement, hopefully, all being well, I'm some time away from it, but it's actually something that collectively within the organisation we've done a little bit of work on in terms of the transition to life off the field and kind of career planning for afterwards. I've actually been very fortunate that PGMOL have supported me through some university qualifications, which I'm currently doing at the moment. So that's really there to give me some options when it comes to finishing. I'm still maybe anywhere from. Well, I'm not going to put a number on it. I think that'd be.
I'll put a number on it.
Some people would hope it would be sooner rather than later, I'm sure, but it will give me some options, and hopefully it's a little bit of a time away yet, but some ideas, and I think the culture is such within the organisation that we're encouraged to look forward and we're encouraged to think, and I'd love to be involved, being able to contribute something back to refereeing when I finish, in whatever capacity that is. But equally, other outside interests are something that I'd like to pursue as well. So I've got a couple of ideas that are kind of there on the horizon, and hopefully exciting projects. But yeah, it's kind of floating there at the moment.
Do you want me to draw you out on what your secret projects are, or will we kind of wait and see?
No. It's probably something that's more meaningful and more interesting to me. It's probably not going to be anything that's going to revolutionise the world, but something that will give me some good years of kind of mental stimulation after I finish will be really welcome.
All right. Well, we look forward to introducing you as Dr. Stuart Attwell at some point in the future. And Chris, I hope I hope you understand why I'm talking about this. I'm not trying to retire you all off, but it just seems to me it's like we say about football, anything that is based in this way is physically taxing. It is something you have to think about. What's your thoughts about how that all works in the game and how you plan for how your career is likely to pan out?
Yeah, it's a good question, and similar to what Stuart's mentioned. Hopefully, that's still a couple of years away yet. I think that around the world, we're starting to do more work in that space of transitioning referees from their active role to what they're going to do afterwards. And often that's within football and staying within refereeing, coaching, and development, and often that's totally outside of football. So I think that it's an area that we're doing some work in, but I think we can do a lot more in. We're seeing those transition programs with the players' associations and groups really taking the next step in making sure that transition can be as smooth as possible, because talking about mentors before, having the experience of my mentors going through it, it can be a difficult transition. So I think the more work we can do and the more support we can provide referees towards the end of their career so that they potentially have a smoother transition, that's obviously a great thing.
Tell us about your mentors then. So this is how do you go about finding people to mentor you?
Yeah, another really good question. So I've been very fortunate in Brisbane to have some great mentors around me, and it's been the product of a program that we've had in place for some time. It's been really successful and produced some excellent world-class referees. So I've had the good fortune of having that pretty much in my own backyard, and that's been a huge part of my success. As Carol-Anne rightly mentioned before, it isn't quite an interesting profession, because the pressure and the scrutiny that referees come under at times is unlike anything else. And the higher we progress with our careers, the more pressure and the more scrutiny there is. So learning from others that have been there and done that is just so important, and the ability to pick ourselves back up and go at the next game and focus on the things that are important and not dwell on the past is so important. And it's such a unique culture as well that I feel that it really takes someone that's been there and done that to really understand what we go through and provide the right tools and strategies to get us back on track to really perform at our best. So yeah, my mentors have been wonderful, and I can't recommend having a mentor or a coach or whatever word you want to put with it enough. It's been a game changer for me.
What sort of things do you look for? Is it personality, affinity, or what do you think is key when you're looking to have a mentor?
Yeah, I don't think there's a magic formula for it. I think that the personality fit is really important, because you've got to be able to talk to that mentor throughout the whole experience. It's easy to talk to someone when things are going well. It's probably a little bit more challenging when we hit those low points that naturally come with any career, whether that's as a player or as a referee. So I think that personality fit and cultural fit is really vital to be able to be honest and transparent and really open to feedback and constructive criticism, and not be afraid to one, share, and two, hear that and take it on board when it's needed.
It sounds, Carol-Anne, like there's a certain bravery you need to be in a sort of mentoring relationship as well, to expose yourself to the fact that you might have had a mistake or you might not have had your best day, and also hopefully it would be someone who'd be able to share your successes with you as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it takes courage to be a referee, to walk out on some of those fields, but you really do have to be willing to admit when you've made a mistake. to be willing to accept that, constructive criticism. You even if the mentor wasn't there, but you would like to share and you need to learn from that, you have to be open and honest with them and be ready to sometimes hear things that you don't want to hear. And I think that's, what makes the right relationship. Sometimes, it might not be what you want to hear, but you learn from it and then you move on and you hopefully can apply it in the next match. But if you're not, open and honest, you're not going to get the most out of the relationship. That's for sure.
What I'm hearing lurking in the background of all of these conversations that we've had and all of the referee conversations generally, I'm afraid, is this situation of abuse, of people treating you in an aggressive way. And I suppose that's one of the reasons, perhaps, Stuart, why it's so important to have people who've experienced these very specific examples of that kind of behavior, of that kind of situation at work. It's important to be able to have conversations with people like that who know what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it does do, it speaks to the importance of having a robust support structure. And, whilst a mentor or a coach is an absolutely invaluable part of that process in terms of understanding and dealing with, the real adversity that comes with, particularly at lower levels, particularly at grassroots levels, where a referee can be isolated on their own, and coming through those difficult situations. There's an importance of having a wider support network in terms of friends, family, a partner, whatever it may be. Maybe someone at the County Football Association that you can engage with and speak to if you're having difficulties. That certainly extends all the way up through the system, and we're very fortunate in terms of the support staff that we've got around us in PGMOL, both from a technical point of view with coaches, but also in terms of well-being, sports psychology, that sort of thing, to allow us to deal with difficult situations like this, learn from them, and move on, and hopefully be better equipped to deal with similar things that happen in the future.
Are you thinking of difficult situations in terms of your career as well, Stuart? Because I know you moved between groups in terms of refereeing, didn't you? You had to kind of effectively, I hope it's not disrespectful to say, but kind of drop down a level and then to move back up. How did you approach that?
No, I think that's equally valid. That you need that support structure in place to deal both with the difficulties when people talk about abuse of referees and physical, verbal confrontation, particularly when it happens lower down the pyramid. But also I think anyone who's operating within refereeing at a senior level will encounter adversity in terms of not maybe achieving what they want to achieve, having difficult spells when things aren't going well, and they've maybe one-off difficult games, and certainly but we're as individuals within refereeing, the difficult moments that we have, the mistakes that we make, the things that other people might perceive as failures, are actually the things that define us. And I think how we learn from those, how we respond to those, and how we improve as a result, they're actually the things that cause the referees who can progress and get to the top level. They're the things that cause them to stand apart, because it's not the referees on the Premier League are not referees who have got to the top because everything has gone perfectly for them all the way up. They're the people that have had difficult moments. They've learned from mistakes, and they've kind of overcome that adversity to get where they are today. And I think everybody in refereeing has got that story, but I think sometimes we don't actually pay enough credit to people for overcoming those moments and becoming better as a result. And I think that's something within the refereeing community we should probably look to celebrate a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely, Stuart. And I think, Chris, what Stuart's talking about really is resilience, isn't it? Is this sense of like, well, if I want my career to carry on, I'm going to encounter all of these difficulties that you guys know so well. And it's what happens next. Is that something you've seen in your own career?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think Stuart summarised that particularly well. that the setbacks and overcoming adversity are all part of the journey, and that can be a little bit, I guess hard to appreciate when you're coming through the ranks, that everyone wants to go out and have a great game and have a perfect game. But the reality is, similar to players, that referees will make mistakes as well. And as Stuart rightly mentioned, it's how we learn from that experience, get better, and improve on the next game that really makes a good referee, not dwell on things that have passed, acknowledging a mistake when it happens, but making the most of it and treating it as an opportunity to get better. I think that is all part of being a resilient and really a successful referee at the end of the day.
Do you think, Caroline, that Stuart's going to know what I'm thinking of right now in the last few days? Do you think sometimes the football community, i.e. managers and other people around the game, could help a bit more with the way that referees are treated?
Well, I think people are always really quick to jump on referees when there's a mistake, or, and jump on us when we're a little bit down. But I think, it is about resilience. Pressure is part of our job, and, we have to be able to operate in those environments. We talked about an understanding of the laws and of how we operate. We need to be able to understand the pressure that they are under, and they need to be able to understand the pressure that we are under. But again, it really is about operating under pressure, continuing to improve. Stuart said the grassroots is probably the scariest place to referee, right? Walking out on a field in Canada, in a small field where there's 100 parents, and I can hear every single thing that they say, is much more personal than walking out into a large stadium of 45,000 people. So, we really do need to get out to the clubs and to the organizations and to the coaches, to help, to really get them to understand that some of these young referees they're developing just like their players are. So they need a little bit of support, and that will help build the resilience of some of our young referees, and be able to operate and continue to operate at the highest level.
Because what we always come back down to is, if there's no referees, then no one can play football and everybody is sad. So what's the point of that? Is that, what do you think, Stuart? Do you feel as though people need to see better behaviour modelled sometimes towards referees?
I think there's probably two ways of looking at it. First of all, I genuinely believe the best way to tackle any kind of concern about behaviour in football is that it's got to be both top down and bottom up. I don't think either end of the pyramid should be abdicating responsibility and saying that it's somebody else's responsibility to fix something if it's broken. So I think everybody's got a role to play. Equally, I think we need to do it in a sensible and a measured approach, because I think everything that people say is bad about football is also everything that people say is good about football. You don't want to sanitize the game too much and take away the energy and the commitment and the passion. But equally, there's a way of doing that, and there's a way of doing that then doesn't transmit into the behaviour of other people to referees at grassroots level. And I think that's where the engagement that we have with the clubs, we do club visits, we go and meet with the players, we go and meet with the managers, and we talk about laws of the game, but we also talk about the importance of positive behaviours and how that translates lower down the football pyramid. So I think invariably there'll be times when people maybe cross those lines and that their behaviour exceeds what's acceptable and what should be tolerated. And I think that's where the football authorities have responsibility to step in and take appropriate and measured action. And equally, we have the responsibility, because we've got tools at our disposal to deal with it appropriately. And if it's right and it's proper to deal with it in that way, we've got processes in place that we can follow. So I don't think I don't think you can take a broad brush approach with it. I think every situation has to be assessed on its merit. But certainly, if something is going to have a detrimental effect on the image of the game, is going to translate into negative behaviours at lower levels of football, then absolutely we should be taking a positive and forthright stance with it.
Because, Chris, as we know, people copy what they see famous players doing on the pitch every day.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely, they do. And as Stuart and Caroline have both mentioned, it's a discussion that needs to happen that involves all the stakeholders in the game and getting buy-in from each party, because it's not something that the referees can do by themselves. And I think that just like when players come through, they've got role models, referees have got role models as well. And I think that you're right, the real impact of some of those role models can be at the grassroots level, which I think Caroline mentioned can be harder at times than in a big stadium that's full of spectators, because you hear every word. So I think there is a responsibility that everyone has within the game to set a good example for those that are coming through.
Yeah, and Caroline, do you think we can learn from other sports about how these things are managed? I'm thinking of, I feel like in basketball, it's much easier to get ejected for bad behavior.
Listen, I think we're going to have to draw on all areas, right? We hear of great examples in different sports. We hear about it in rugby and basketball and things like that. I think we're going to have to take a real comprehensive approach to this. Not one solution is going to fit all environments. So I really do think pulling on all the great, all sports are having problems, retaining their referees and having problems with abuse and that kind of thing. So I think, there is something to be said for a common, coming together with great ideas and trying them out. We've seen the respect campaigns, in England and across the world. We've seen mentor programs. We've seen local clubs having, a designated person to make sure that the clubs are following their rules. So I think it really is going to take, a real comprehensive approach. I'm not sure there's going to be a one solution to solve all things, but, at some point it may mean, harsher penalties, that kind of thing as well.
It might do. We've talked about in quite a lot of detail about some of the technicalities of refereeing. We've talked about some of the negatives. We've talked about some of the positive ways that you can improve your careers. Talked about mentors. Stuart, what do you feel like the job of refereeing has given you?
I think what it has done is has developed a range of transferable skills. I think the days of a referee, particularly within the elite levels of the game, the days of a referee being someone who goes and applies the laws and is really there just to have a technical understanding of how to officiate the game, are long gone. I think the role is very managerial now. In terms of managing people, managing an event, and making sure that we do it within the framework of the laws of the game, which is obviously very important for various reasons. And I think because of that, the skills that I'll take away when I finish refereeing will stand me in good stead to step into a variety of different spaces in other walks of life. In terms of communication, decision making. Managing difficult situations, managing difficult people. I think I'll be really well equipped, and I look around my colleagues, both in the select group in PGMOL and internationally as well, and you see those kinds of skills absolutely in abundance. So I think for anyone who's maybe just thinking about starting out on the refereeing journey, or is very much in the early stages of their refereeing career, I think if you look at what it will develop in you and what skills it will help you develop, it's a fantastic way of being involved with the game, and there are many fantastic benefits from being involved.
Caroline, would you say communication is the key thing you need to be a good referee?
I think communication, I think people management is really important. I think you have to be able to get your message across, and you have to have the tools to do it in multiple different ways. At the international level, it can't always be long sentences, because not everyone's going to understand, what you're saying. So it's about taking a bunch of tools and being able to communicate them in a clear and concise way, and hopefully have the 22 players on the field all be on the same page, which usually doesn't happen. But to Stuart's point, I think, for young referees, they can take so much from refereeing. I remember when I was first applying for jobs, I always wondered, should I say that I'm an international referee? Because, I always thought people would think that means you're going to be away a lot. And I can tell you that, for every job that I got, they saw it as an asset. They saw it as, me having self-confidence, being able to make decisions, being organized and that kind of thing. So I think, it builds resilience, as we've spoken about before. So I think it really is something that we can take away. I use my refereeing and things I learned every day in my real job. I manage a lot of people, and, it really has provided me those tools, working with different types of people, cooperation, negotiation, all kinds of things. So I think it really offers us so much. It's not only the big experiences and the great tournaments and the good friends, but it really does, provide us a lot that we can use in our daily life.
Chris, is there any particular thing you've learned through refereeing that you wouldn't necessarily have expected at the start?
Yeah, definitely. I think two of the biggest aspects that always come up with things that I've learned out of football and out of refereeing are certainly around leadership skills and teamwork. Something has given me, similar to all the other aspects that are super important around resilience and persistence and communication, but certainly the ability to have leadership skills out on the pitch that transfer to off the pitch, and the ability to work as part of a team. As Caroline mentioned at the start, our refereeing group is really that additional team, and to be able to lead and manage our own team to get the best out of my own team or our team when we're out on the pitch is a super important skill, and one that I would not have expected starting out 20 plus years ago.
This is a pretty inspiring place to finish, I think, guys, hearing what the benefits have been from your careers so far, in Chris and Stuart's cases, and in the past for you, Caroline, in refereeing. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit here and talk to us about this. I think we could carry on for another several hours, but we have to let you guys go. I'm sure you watching at home would have learned loads, as I certainly have done. A reminder, you can follow the PGMOL on Twitter and on Instagram. Just search for @FA_PGMOL. And you can also watch previous Breaking Barriers sessions on the official PGMOL YouTube channel. If you're considering furthering your knowledge of the game, or perhaps have a New Year's resolution that involves enrolling on a refereeing course, you can get in touch here. Hope you all will. Thanks again. Stay safe, stay in touch, and I hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one.